Brings us to today. Will Chamberlain's here. He's the senior counsel at the Internet Accountability Project and the Article 3 Project, and he joins us now. Will, good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, good to be with you.
You say that, well, it can't just end with Scott McAfee, the judge down there, letting this case continue. What should happen next?
What companies deserve your hard-earned dollar? Which would you want to work for? How can you know if they share your values? Just ask us. Just Capital is a nonprofit that tracks who really means business in supporting workers, customers, communities, the environment, and shareholders. We measure progress, track success, and help them be better. When you see the Just Capital seal, you know what's real, because just business is better business. Visit justcapital.com to learn who makes your dollar count.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Well, I mean, it's as simple as, it's time for the state of Georgia to wake up. In particular, I'm talking about Brian Kemp and Attorney General Chris Carr. Fani Willis perjured herself very obviously in court. She said that her relationship with her subordinate Nathan Wade didn't begin until late 2021, when there's a pile of evidence saying that it began as early as 2019, including her former landlord, a very disinterested witness, text messages from Terrence Bradley, and cell phone evidence that shows that Mr. Wade was at her dwelling repeatedly in the early morning hours prior to the date that they say their relationship started. They lied because they didn't want to be disqualified off the case. They thought that if it came out that she had hired her then beau to be a special prosecutor and paid him a bunch of money on an hourly rate, which is very rare among prosecutors, they thought Judge McAfee would disqualify her, and so they lied. But lying under oath is a crime, and so she should be prosecuted. She should also be disbarred. She violated a number of different ethical rules. I mean, obviously, you can't perjure yourself. There's a distinct ethical rule about candor to the court. You're not allowed to lie or mislead the judge in a court of law as a lawyer. There's also the fact that she has unique duties as a prosecutor to not, speak out of turn. There's an obligation not to say things in public that heighten public condemnation of the accused. She did that when she accused Michael Roman and his lawyer Ashley Merchant of playing the race card. It's a very straightforward violation of Georgia's rules of professional conduct for lawyers.
Yes. So
disbarred and prosecuted. That's what happened to her.
And Judge McAfee scolded her for those public remarks and did say that she was implying that it was the defendants who were being racist towards her for scrutinizing her in a way that they're entitled to. But on this question of her committing perjury before the court, Scott McAfee kind of danced away from that when he wrote his opinion. He suggested that it was possible, it was hard to find them credible, but he couldn't come up with a conclusive finding here. What did you think of Judge McAfee's posture towards what seemed to the rest of us to be obvious lies?
I mean, I think you've nailed it. He didn't want to say that the elected district attorney of Fulton County lied under oath. And you could tell if you were watching the hearings, he was a little bit worried about the longer-term consequences of that, not just for him and his own political ambitions, but for all the other prosecutions that are going on, right? Like, her name is appearing on every criminal prosecution. She's ultimately responsible for every person that goes to jail in the entire Atlanta metro area within Fulton County. That's a lot of people and a lot of court proceedings that would be disrupted by the fact that it turns out the DA is a liar. But the DA is a liar, and it's his job not to, at a certain point, like, his job is to do justice. And in this case, what Fani Willis and her beau were trying to do was deceive the court in the service of denying the Trump defendants due process. Every defendant in this case is entitled to a disinterested prosecutor, and that they would deceive the court and try and hide the evidence of their conflict and lie, totally unacceptable.
The one of the most cartoonish examples of what you're talking about is when Nathan Wade was talking about his divorce paperwork, where he constantly insisted on in sworn affidavits that Oh, no, I wasn't stepping out on my wife. No, I'd never had a relationship with any other woman. No, it was denied over and over. And then when he was asked in court about that, he became really philosophical. He's like, well, technically, the way I thought about my marriage was it was over already. So therefore, I was answering honestly when I said, no, I wasn't stepping out on my wife. I was like, dude, you're a lawyer. It was a legal question. Were you legally married or not? And the judge was like, that was ridiculous. That was the most ridiculous sequence of events I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, it was embarrassing. And I mean, it was a bizarre thing to try and do because, I mean, do you really think it's going to persuade the judge? If anything, it just, you're better off admitting exactly what you did. And the big irony here is the way that the judge viewed the actual conflict of interest, the law around that. He viewed it very narrowly. He was like, you have to prove continuing financial stake in the investigation on the behalf of the district attorney. So oddly enough, under that standard, they probably, that's the wrong standard to apply. But if they had just told the truth completely from start to finish and just admitted, oh, yeah, we were in a relationship. Oh, yeah, I hired my boyfriend. That probably wouldn't have met the threshold that Judge McAfee set. In fact, and so in the ironic thing is they've created all sorts of problems for themselves by lying when it actually really doesn't turn out to have been necessary. They could have just told the truth and fessed up.
Right. And the whole thing where she said, I paid him back constantly with cash. Is, again, quite obviously a lie. And it was a useful construct to offer some sort of excuse like, oh, yeah, everything was on the up and up. But a real district attorney who was really acting in an ethical way would have documented every single one of those reimbursements in order to make sure she had the record of it. So if she was ever asked or called on it, she'd be able to present that. She didn't have any of that. She's like, no, there's no paperwork to support it. You're just going to have to go with the trust me, bro explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I just worked for the state of Florida, right? And so I don't know how many there's probably some people in the audience who've worked for state governments before. You know that they tell you right off the bat, you don't get to take gifts from contractors with the state, right? People who do business with the state do not take gifts from them, period, and stop. And so she not only hired her beau as a contractor, she then accepted gifts from him routinely and never documented any of this. I mean, it's just, that actually is very flagrant. Now, whether that, it's actually beyond the questions that are in the case of like, is there a conflict, is there not? It's appalling behavior. It's ridiculous. And it should lead to her resigning and being disbarred.
Well, it also leads to more questions about what else is she being dishonest about. So you mentioned, obviously, every other case that the Fulton County District Attorney has ever taken up. If I'm a defendant in any of those cases, if I've been convicted in a case there, I'd be wanting to raise this as an issue. Wait a second, the DA is a liar? That kind of seems like a problem. The other piece is, to what extent was she a part of an active political conspiracy against Trump? We know that she's willing to be deceptive about the basics, about who she's paying, who she's sleeping with, and under what circumstances. So why wouldn't she conceal from us some of the big questions, like who's actually driving the Donald Trump prosecution in Fulton County, Georgia?
Right. Yeah. So she probably has answers to those questions. Now, I mean, you could never get her to say the truth. But she's made clear she doesn't care about being under oath. Like, it's no different than just being out with her friends.
Yes.
Being under oath in terms of like what she's willing to say truthfully. And you'd think a lawyer would be different than that. And actually, it's really important that lawyers be different than that because courts can't do justice if they don't have a good sense of what the truth is.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons judges get so angry when litigants or just witnesses or dissemble and lie. They get furious because they can't do their job.
Now, I want to take us back to where we started, which is your suggestion today. You are calling on the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, and his attorney general, Chris Carr, to charge both Nathan Wade and Fani Willis with perjury. Do you expect that that's something they will do?
No, I don't think so. I doubt it. I've been very unimpressed. They've been seemingly happy to take a back seat. I feel like there's some lingering resentment towards Donald Trump from what happened during 2020 among Georgia's the top level of Georgia state government.
Yep.
But they need to get over that. This isn't just about Trump. It's about all the other defendants, and it's about the legitimacy and the seriousness that people are going to look at Georgia going forward. I mean, they're letting Fani Willis turn the state of Georgia into a joke, an embarrassment. Lying under oath in front of the entire country in a way that's just blatantly obvious. I mean, it makes their judicial system seem silly. And it's on them. I mean, they can't, I know they have some limitations in terms of pardon power and things like that. Like the Georgia governor, for example, doesn't have the pardon power in the way that governors in other states do. But what they do have, certainly, what the attorney general does have, is the authority to prosecute crimes committed in the state of Georgia. And wow, I mean, Fani Willis straightforwardly committed perjury in ways that are provable and obvious to everybody just based on the evidence revealed in that court hearing.
Yes, but without the judge saying that. So the judge, like I said before, Judge McAfee went out of his way to kind of conceal that he thought that she had committed perjury. Do you think that hurts the ability of the attorney general to launch that prosecution? He's like, look, the judge hasn't even said that, and it was in his courtroom.
Not really. I mean, this is for objective observers can evaluate the testimony and compare it to the facts that were adduced on the ground, right? Like whatever the judge thinks of that, whether that judge thinks it's about perjury, he wasn't charged with answering that particular question, whether the elements of perjury were satisfied and whether a crime was committed.
Right.
Maybe he'll later be charged with that, and we'll see what he thinks. But I think at a minimum, there's probable cause. I mean, even in the opinion, he says there are reasonable questions about the truthfulness of the district attorney's testimony. That's sufficient for probable cause for at least an indictment and an investigation. I mean, ultimately, if Fani Willis can prove that all her bizarre and ridiculous stories were in fact true, good for her. But she should be indicted and charged and made to show up in a court of law and prove her point.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be treating her better than she's treating Trump based on that standard for sure. It's
correct.
Kind of amazing. Lastly, the Trump side, I see all of his co-defendants are now requesting a review of Judge McAfee's decision to not disqualify Fani Willis from this Georgia case. Does that mean there's still some sort of outside chance she could be disqualified? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, I think that's the way to think about it. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not like absurdly unlikely, but it's not the probable outcome. If you were a betting man, you'd say to put the odds somewhere around 25% or maybe 15 to 25%, something like that. The reason being that it's not that. I mean, eventually, eventually when this goes up at appeal, I think the appellate court will certainly rule that she should have been disqualified. The question is whether they can appeal that question now before the trial has happened. That's what's called an interlocutory appeal. And that not only requires the judge the trial judge to agree that the issue should go up on appeal right now, but also the appellate court needs to agree that it's an issue of such importance to take it right away on appeal before the rest of the proceedings go forward. So, I mean, there's two different entities, and it's really within both of their discretion to simply say, no, thank you, we want to go forward. And so you basically just have to bet that they both, what has to happen is both of those entities have to decide this is of such importance that it should be taken. Now, I think it should be taken from their perspective, just on the grounds that if they don't take this, don't resolve this DQ issue right now, and they go to trial and get all these convictions, and then it gets reversed on appeal, well, then all the results of the trial will be thrown out. So it's a giant waste of time and resources. So I think, getting this right, there's just really good prudential reasons that this should go up on appeal right now and get fixed.
Cool. All right. Will Chamberlain, again, senior counsel at the Internet Accountability Project and the Article 3 Project, is a great column in the Federalist today on this issue. Always appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much.